Try to recall the first time you heard the letters PTSD spoken in a sentence, or when you heard the phrase post-traumatic stress syndrome and wondered what exactly it was, and why we as a nation were so concerned with something never really discussed in years past. After all, we'd heard terms such as shell shock, dating back to World Wars I and II for psychological damage suffered by troops, but it was no big deal. Or was it? PTSD actually began as a recognized medical condition as far back as 1952. Appearing in the Diagnosis and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, known more handily as the DSM, under the name Gross Stress Reaction. So it's important to understand this is nothing new. It's not something just made up to make medical excuse, as some of the more pin-headed members of society first claimed. It's real. And a nation that has been at war for so long is now coming to grips with not just what it does to soldiers, but how it affects their families today and for many years into the future. Our first guest is retired from the Green Beret Special Forces, former Apache helicopter pilot and co-founder of the Warrior Angels Foundation, one who has suffered with PTSD, and he's joined by his brother, who can bring home the family side of this issue. Welcome Andrew and Adam Marr to the Hardline. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here, and first of all to you, thank you so much for your service and everything that you brought to us.
Ed, thanks for having us on. And Adam's Apache helicopter pilot. I was a former Green Beret.
Okay, so but we've got two
right.
of you here who are both here, and everybody's had the time spent in the military. And you come from a military family.
Mm-hmm. Well, all of our brothers served, and we're one of four. We're two of four brothers that all served.
So when we use those words PTSD, again, I go back to a little bit that when we first heard the words, and I'll be honest, people said, "Oh, come on, this can't be such a big deal here." I even heard people when it started saying, "It's a couple of soldiers looking for a dodge."
Right.
But we've learned so much more now. It's still got to be something that you've got to overcome with people, because still the general public doesn't get it, what it really is at its core.
And I didn't get it at first because I wasn't affected by it. So we thought, man, those are mentally weak people, like you said, that they're looking for out, or they're bringing up something because they don't want to go into combat. But when you start having hardened, experienced warfighters that start having these psychological issues and other physical manifestations, we have to start looking at that, right? So it is a real thing that is occurring.
Do you talk about it amongst yourselves with the other soldiers, with the guys and the gals? Is there a sense when you sit down and talk to your fellow soldiers that, boy, I hope this isn't happening to me. I hope it doesn't happen to somebody I know?
I think initially no, because there is a stigma. You want to be strong. You don't want to be perceived as weak, and so those are the feelings and emotions that are associated with it initially. And so it's, hey, I'm not going to tell my buddy because, then how are they going to look at me? And then am I not going to be able to do my job anymore? And I'm going to have to be removed and then go talk to a psychiatrist. And so it really starts with the education and letting people know that, hey, there is a better way.
Then what is the first and most important stage of the education that the non-soldier, the general public, needs to know about soldiers suffering with PTSD?
Well, I think the message is that we have a viable solution. We have something, science has revealed something that can help, and that is the treatment that we're offering up through the Warrior Angels Foundation, and that's treating the underlying condition for both traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress.
But what does that begin with?
That begins with saying, hey, there is an issue, there is a problem, we need the right people standing up, people like myself and Adam saying, hey, this has affected us, this is our story, this can happen to you, and here's how we'll go about righting this wrong.
Do you get the sense when you talk to the general public, people out there, kids, whatever, that maybe at first that they're not quite sure? Because let's be honest, some people have taken PTSD over the years and they've made it sound like the soldiers are crazy. We know we know that there are people who are horribly affected by this, but that doesn't happen to everybody. It's a stigma that you've got to get through, yes?
I think recently a lot more information has come out on it. And so I do believe that the general civilian is becoming more educated. So in our conversations, in our talks, there's more of a familiarity with it. It's not uncharted territory. There's also a large population that it is, and they don't know about it. And so really, it's that education process. This is something that exists, and there is a way that we are seeing improvement with these guys.
Yeah, and the first step, Ed, like you said, is leaders in the military community stepping up and that saying, hey, I've been there, this happened to me, this is what we did to fix it, and we can replicate this for the masses.
But is the military community, specifically the VA, the medical help that you guys get, is it everything it should be?
Their care is lacking. right now. And that's why we're offering up a viable alternative solution.
But that astounds me right at its core, because we've been at war for so long. There are so many soldiers coming home with PTSD. Why is the government, the Veterans Administration, why is the military not doing absolutely everything they can with every dollar to help the soldiers coming home?
Those are the same questions that we ask ourselves.
Well, they've tripled the infrastructure of psychotherapy and for behavioral health. And 15 years later, it's still not working. So we have a system that's predicated on treating traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress with psychotherapy and medication. That has not been the answer. In most cases, that just makes things worse.
Well, but that's what we've always done as a society. We
Right.
want to medicate, push as much medication as we can, believing that that's going to work.
That mask symptoms.
But isn't it fair to say then what you're doing through Warrior Angels is you're trying to tell people that's not the answer. That
Right.
there are other answers that need to be involved here, and we need to push those forward.
Ed, yes, you get it. Absolutely. We are treating the underlying condition, and we're doing it with an objective blood test. Which, why would we not want to do something objective like that to see, hey, is your biochemistry lined up? Is it correct? And if it's not, we can correct that deficiency.
And Andrew can relate directly to that same scenario more than I can, because with his injury, he was on 13 different medications from the VA. Through this treatment, he's now on 0 of those.
When you're on 13 medications, do you have the sense that it's working? I mean, do you have the sense that you're just being medicated into a hole?
I was crying for help. I was on fire saying, put out this fire. And so at first they're giving me medications. So I'm saying, great, give me medications. And then I start having more problems than we started with. And you come to that point where like, hey, I think these medications are even worse than I was before. But now I'm on them, or I'm addicted to them, or I don't know how to function without them. And this is that vicious cycle. Add in alcohol, add in not being able to sleep, and man, we have now a massive problem.
So then what's the difference when a soldier comes to Warriors Angels and starts to talk to you guys? How do things change?
Well, first of all, we're gaining their trust back in a treatment modality that is going to treat them like an individual. So everything we do is highly individualized based on their specific needs. Again, we'll go and we'll do a blood test to find out what they're deficient in. If we find they're deficient in these important brain hormones that are produced in the brain called neurosteroids, we replace them through natural means, natural physiological means. And people get better when you do that.
I mentioned the family at the top of this, because when a soldier comes home, you have to help the soldier. But then there's the family when you have a brother, a sister who comes home and affected like this. Is it not fair to say that you treat the soldier, but you've got to help the family too, because it is such a trauma for a family to then have to do it? You couldn't remember how to drive home for a while.
Right.
What's it like for the family to have to deal with that?
You couldn't be more on point with your assessment. It's incredibly difficult. Andrew, my older brother of 2 years, and looking up to him my whole life. You know, now he's Green Beret. He's at the pinnacle of his career, and then like that, trenches of despair. And I'm getting phone calls with him sobbing, driving home, drinking, because that's all he can do to quell the anxiety. And I'm like, this is a bad situation. And how do you go from that to that with no visible signs? How do you get all these symptoms? So the family member hurts. The family member has uncertainty. The family member doesn't know what's going on right there along with the person getting treated. And you're ultimately saying, hey, they made it back home safe. What's going on now? We want to help answer those questions because we had to go out and find them.
Yeah, he looks normal. You know, I don't see it. Why is he doing that? And that's the difficult concept to grasp. So that's why it's so important that the right people are standing up and saying, hey, this is what's going on. This is what can happen. This is how we stop it from getting any worse, and we can improve it.
Warrior Angels is doing its part.
Mm-hmm.
Is the government doing its part?
The government is doing what the government does. We can't affect that. What we can affect is putting out an alternative solution that is better than the current one that's happening.
How are you doing?
Well, Adam, how am I doing?
It's incredible because at his worst, I would say somebody who is very robotic in his mannerisms, his eyes were glossed over, and his personality was very narrow because parts of his brain were turned off. Now, through this treatment, he's finally becoming himself again, his pre-injury state. And the beautiful thing about that is everybody that we've had a chance to go through is seeing the same results. So people are getting their family members back. They're getting their brother, they're getting their father back. It's incredible.
Coming off medication, going back to work, being involved with their children's lives again, coming back to going from no quality of life to now having quality of life.
I got about 15 seconds. Do you feel like you got a second chance that you're reborn?
Absolutely, absolutely. Death was coming, and we stood up to it, and we said no, and then we found out an answer. We wanted to bring it to everybody else.
I got to tell you, as we spoke before the show, but as a guy whose dad was in the military, I have a lot of friends in the military. I am in awe of what you guys do every single day. I'm in awe of the fact that you continue to try and you continue to fight, and I'm glad that we can do something to help. The organization, again, is the Warrior Angels Foundation. Learn more by going to waftbi.org, and then make sure that you thank these soldiers. Andrew, Adam, gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you,
It's
sir.
been absolutely pleasure. I hope we get a chance to talk again. Stay with us. The Hard Line continues.